Hey, Hail Stalkers, thanks for joining us today. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox, and we are tracking storms across the plains once again today. This is day 3 or 4 out of our long severe weather saga that has been going on since last week. Now, over the plains, we've seen just day after day after day of storms. We had a 3-star hailstorms on Saturday. We saw storms across Omaha, southern Nebraska, and northern Kansas yesterday. We have another round of storms today that are likely to unleash massive hail across places like Kansas, southern Nebraska, and portions of Missouri. By tomorrow, storms are going to push to the east, and we're finally a little bit calmer through the middle of the week, finally ending the severe weather saga. Now, as always, put your weather questions in the comments section, and I'll make sure that we get to answering all of those areas that you guys live in. You know, what questions you have about the risks, the timeline today. We've got meteorologist Martin Lowrimore, who will also be joining us later on in this forecast. But before we get to the forecast, let's make sure, A, that you guys can hear me. Put in the chat, can you guys hear me okay? And then also, we're going to talk about what we saw this weekend. So over this weekend, we actually saw a ton of severe weather across southern Nebraska and the northern side of Kansas. Take a look at some of the hail that we saw this weekend from that 3-star hail map. Here it is. And again, this hit a ton of houses across southern Nebraska. On Saturday night, it was a 3-star hailstorm with maximum hail size, about tennis ball, baseball size hail. About 40 to 60,000 properties impacted by 1-inch hail or larger. So a ton of people impacted across southern Nebraska. And then we also saw the northern side of Kansas with storms on Saturday. Now let's go to Sunday, where we saw storms across Nebraska once again. Take a look at that hail. Holy moly, larger than the size of a golf ball, probably closer to baseball size hail in some portions of Nebraska. And we even got a few tornadoes out of this system. This one coming in from Colorado. But a more impressive tornado, wait for this video right here. This is so impressive. Take a look at this. Now, this was out of Nebraska. This was yesterday. This was taken by Tyler Pardon. He is a NSSL researcher. They are out there on this campaign researching tornadoes, and this is a crazy video that they got.
Yeah, we got it. Oh yeah, we'll be fine. Just keep scanning it. If we get too far, I want you to reorient the truck. And we're going to point towards this and go. Okay. Holy cow. Look at that motion. Holy cow. Yeah, that's the north of that house. That thing is deep. That is high. It's getting bigger. It's turning into a... Oh yeah, we need to reorient the truck. Okay. It's dark.
Wow, now I'm going to rewind this video because I want to point out one thing here before we move on to the forecast. I see a few questions about the forecast. Look at that little mesovorticity you can see coming out of that tornado. Look at that right there on the right side of the tornado. I mean, very, very impressive. And this is something that we could get once again today. So let's move on to the forecast today. I know a lot of people have questions about the forecast today, so let's get right into that. Now, today we have a pretty impressive low pressure system setting up across the northern portion of Oklahoma and southern side of Kansas. You can see that right here. We've got a front that will eventually turn into a cold front over the next few hours, maybe the next 8 to 12 hours. We've got that cold front that's going to be moving to the east. Now, a lot of today will depend on how fast this cold front will move. If it stays pretty stagnant, just sitting over this area, we have a high likelihood for discrete or semi-discrete supercells. That's your hailers and your very significant tornadoes. If this moves a little bit faster, then these storms are going to become more linear. Okay, so it's a long line of storms, and that's going to increase the wind risk for today. So it really depends on how fast this front moves along and how fast this low pressure system will move out to the east. So far this morning, we've already seen some Severe thunderstorm warnings. We've got a severe thunderstorm watch in place right now for portions of Illinois into Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. That's highlighted there in pink. The main risk here is for strong wind gusts, 60 miles, maybe 65, 70 mile per hour wind gusts across this area. Actually, in Chicago, we had a 79 mile per hour wind gust. Very, very impressive in Chicago. So storms in Chicago were probably pretty loud this morning as they came through with that severe thunderstorm warning in place. Now we've got storms moving across St. Louis today, and I know we have a lot of questions about St. Louis, including, will we get any hail in St. Louis? So you could, but the bigger risk for St. Louis today is going to be that high wind risk, maybe a very low tornado risk, low hail risk, and a major flooding risk across St. Louis today. You can already see storms forming in this area and just trailing over and over and over. We call this the training effect. In St. Louis, this is not your last round of storms. This is your first round of storms. We've got more storms coming for you guys today. Moving on here down to Oklahoma, it's a little cloudy right now. We need those clouds to clear away. If we want those storms today, we need those temperatures to warm up. And temperatures aren't bad right now. 84 in Oklahoma City, a little bit cooler in KC at 73. But you can see a very well-defined area where we have warmer temperatures and cooler temps behind. There's your front. That's going to be a very, very big factor for storms today. And speaking of storms today, we have 75 million, more than 75 million under the severe risk for today, including that marginal risk in green, level 2 slight risk in yellow, level 3 enhanced in orange, and that most significant risk, level 4, a moderate risk from Kansas all the way up to St. Joe, Missouri, just barely skimming into the southern side of Iowa. All hazards for your severe weather risk for today. Moving on to tomorrow, a long line of storms. This cold front, it's moving out of the plains and it's moving across the East Coast all the way down to southern Texas. As this front moves east, we're going to have certain areas for hail, certain areas for high wind. I already see some questions in the chat about Texas storms. You guys are right in the middle of that storm risk for tomorrow, but we'll break down exactly who can see hail and who can see high winds tomorrow. Finally, things calm down by Wednesday. We have 2 areas to watch for Wednesday, including some hail across southern Texas. Once again, the western side, Abilene, Lubbock, you guys are included in that risk on Wednesday. So there's your severe weather risk for this week, or at least the first few days of the week. We're going to go through the main hazards first, and then we'll move on to some of the, I like to call it inside baseball for meteorology. You know, what are your weather models saying? Why does today look different from what we saw yesterday and Saturday? Why is today so significant? So we'll get to that here in just a few minutes. But here's a look at your wind forecast for today. Dallas just barely outside of that wind risk today, just barely on the edge, maybe Fort Worth and the wind risk for today. I see some questions on here about any hail for DFW. So again, you guys are just on the edge of that hail risk for today. That wind risk as well, it's pretty low for DFW. It's a lot higher as you go up into places like Kansas, including Kansas City and Des Moines. Let's see, can we move up there? Let me see if I've got my graphics to move up there right now. I can just zoom in here. We've got an area. Look at this area right here. It's a little bit darker. I hope that you guys can see that. This is an area of concern for some stronger wind gusts, more than 70 miles an hour. We're talking about probably 75 to 80 miles an hour. That's possible anywhere from the northern side of Oklahoma all the way up to Iowa. So just again, depends on when these storms turn more linear, that long line of storms, that means that we're going to have that wind risk. However, if we can get these discrete supercells or supercells that are more on their own, that'll be your tornado and your hail risk. So that goes anywhere from Kansas City just to the west of KC, into Wichita, Topeka, Kansas, Salina, Kansas, all included in this tornado forecast, and Des Moines, Iowa, also included in that level 3 tornado risk here. Again, places like Oklahoma City and St. Louis are included in the tornado risk, but it's a lot lower of a risk compared to what we have in places like Iowa, Missouri, and Kansas. Zooming down here to that level 3 risk highlighted there in red, so you guys can see exactly where it starts and stops. And last but not least, let's talk about the hail risk for today. How large could this hail go? Easily up to softball size hail possible for today. I think that we could get hail sizes 4 inches and larger for today, but my map only goes up to softball size hail. I think that's absolutely possible for today. Let's take a look at the hail forecast. So exactly who gets that softball size hail? Very similar to the tornado risk. It's right in the center and eastern side of Kansas and the northern side of Oklahoma. Let's actually zoom down. Let's put some more cities on the board here, and let's zoom down into areas that we are most concerned about today. Now, we were talking about the potential for Dallas-Fort Worth to get these large hailstones today. It's going to be a very, very low chance for large hail here. You guys are technically out of the Storm Prediction Center risk. However, I'd include you guys in our risk. I'd actually kind of bring this yellow area down a little bit. It's where I had it earlier before Storm Prediction Center updated their risk for today. It's going to be a low chance to get hail in Texas today. Better chance as you go up into Oklahoma. Take a look at Kansas, though. This is the best chance for large hail today, where we're using levels that we don't often use. You know, we very, very rarely use this most significant extreme risk levels here. But I do think that today warrants that large hail risk to go to the highest levels. We're including Salina, Emporia, and Topeka in those highest level risks for today. I think that we could see some discrete supercells in this area before they become more linear into places like Kansas City and the eastern side of Kansas. Now, Wichita, you guys may be a little bit to the south, but you guys are also in that risk today. Moving to the north now into Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa. I think that you guys are right on the edge of that hail and wind risk. It really depends on windstorms, again, go linear, but this area will see those linear storms first. So you guys will be the first to see that switch over from hail to wind. And then into places like St. Louis, Indianapolis, and Fayetteville, where we're getting storms now, but we're going to get another round of storms later on this afternoon and evening. We've got multiple rounds of storms here, but the risks here are going to be a lot lower. They're going to be a lot different than what we see in Kansas. We're going to see more of a wind risk in this area than what we see for hail. Now, before I move on to timeline, any weather questions that I have missed so far? Any hail for Des Moines? Yeah, you guys have a chance, but again, your storm risk is going to go more linear first. So we're talking about in this area for Des Moines, Iowa. We've got that hail risk. I think that you guys could easily see golf ball size hail for today. Better chance for high winds, though, in Des Moines compared to what we would see in Kansas. But yes, still, golf ball size hail is nothing to, you know, just kind of blow off. It's still very, very impressive for Des Moines. Ohio, you guys are probably going to see some very low hail, if any, today. Better chances on the western side of Ohio, but you guys have a better chance for actually tornadoes tomorrow. So we'll get to Ohio here in just a few minutes for that risk for tornadoes tomorrow. Okay, I think those are most of our questions right now. I've answered some questions about St. Louis, Texas. We'll kind of go through this with our timeline too. I'll make sure, I know there's a lot of people joining us from St. Louis today, so I'll make sure to point you guys out as we go through the timeline. You know, we have storms ongoing through St. Louis right now. We're going to see another round of storms later on today. So we'll see 2 different rounds of storms here. This first round, it's mainly a wind risk or just a flooding risk. Later on today, we're going to see redevelopment of storms across Kansas. And now models, I'm going to be honest with you, models are not handling this very well. Models didn't handle storms well yesterday either in Oklahoma. Now, they did a pretty good job in Nebraska and Kansas, but they didn't do a very good job in Oklahoma. So take this with a grain of salt. But what I can tell you is that we've got 2 rounds of storms coming today. Got that first round that we're seeing right now, anywhere from St. Louis all the way up to Indiana. Now, it's bringing rain and some wind risks to the northern side of Indiana right now. Later on today, I would say right around 2 to 3 o'clock through the central and western portion of Kansas, that's when we get those first few supercells. These will go up and they'll go up fast today. What we're watching for here is that initial hail and tornado threat anywhere from I-70 to the north of I-70 and just to the west of 135. So right around the Wichita, Salina area for the first initiation of storms. And then we could see maybe a storm or 2 just south of Omaha and the western portion of Lincoln. Then storms will slowly build to the east. They'll move to the east, right? And they'll become a lot more widespread, so more storms in this area. By that time, that's when we're watching for the switch over from those isolated, discrete supercells to more of a linear wind risk. What does that mean? I've said that word a lot. That means that we're watching for this long line of storms, and that's the time that we see a switch over from hail to wind. So this is what you could consider to be round 2, and this will continue to track through places like Kansas City, Wichita, right along 35 into I-70 through the late night hours. And we could see some redevelopment behind this, but that'll be our main show for today. Moving down into places like Oklahoma. Now, models have a massive disagreement on what we are watching for Oklahoma today. Few storms want to pop up through the early afternoon hours. The most severe stuff will come through the late afternoon into the early evening, but models cannot decide what exactly is going to happen here. So in Oklahoma today, I think it's going to be very, very conditional, as oftentimes dry lines are. We've got a dry line in this area, and that's where storms will initiate later on today. Oklahoma, northern Texas, again, your timeline is going to be a little uncertain. Now let's talk about your significant hail model. Again, the largest hailstones likely to fall anywhere from the central to the eastern portion of Nebraska. We can't rule anything out in Oklahoma, but again, it's a lot more conditional in this area. Really, really large hail likely today, as you can see from those areas highlighted there in red for large hail. Now I want to get more into the models. So you've got your basic understanding of what's going to happen today. But if you're a weather nerd like us, or you want more information about storms today, I'm going to pull in meteorologist Martin Lowrimore. Now, Martin, you've been watching models all morning long. You've been watching storms all weekend long. Tell us what the difference is from what we saw Saturday and Sunday to today. Why is today so much more important to keep an eye on?
I think we just got a lot better ingredients that really are a lot more prevalent for today, which is the reason why we're not sitting at enhanced risk today. We're sitting in a moderate risk at 4 out of 5, which is what I really think is the driving factor, and also location. But the one thing that, me and Taylor actually talked about this before, the timing of these storms is a lot more advantageous for supercell development. That is one of the big things, because supercells obviously is the one where you can actually see a lot more of those hailstones and tornadoes as well. So let's take a look at the model forecast for right now. What we're going to be looking at for the next little bit. So this is just your regular composite reflectivity. This is what you would be seeing, basically what your radar would look like more likely. So as we advance in time, this is a little bit further south than what we're expecting for that initial development, moving across parts of central Kansas, and Kansas City could be seeing that, but more than likely it'll be linear. So, okay, you've already seen this before. I want to break down into a comparison between a model yesterday versus a model today. So this is our model for today. This is this morning. We call this our supercell composite. This basically just throws in a bunch of different things. Where is the best place that you're going to see supercell development? That's what we're looking at. So we advance this in time. We're sitting at just around storm initiation. This is about, actually right now, technically, this is the most up-to-date. Give me a second. Try to pull up. There we go. We pull up the most up-to-date one. So this is where we are sitting at right now. Advancing in time, that supercell development, trying to push in these storms right here. I actually do want to note, I'm going to pull up our current radar right now, because we actually already have these storms trying to initiate right now at noon. So this specific model, not doing a bad job so far this morning and this afternoon. So we advance in time. This supercell composite gets insane. We see some of these deep purples, some bright purples right ahead of this cold front right here. This is right around 7 o'clock. So we could still see development of supercells later on. We compare this to yesterday as we advance in time. Remember, those storms were a little bit further north. And as we get to that peak timing, you only really see a little bit of that purple there. So the ingredients for these storms to initiate supercell development is looking very, very strong. That's one of the big things we've been watching for today, is that supercell development. And with the storms already trying to fire up right now at noon, we are seeing the timing of these storms looking a lot better than the past 2 days, because, Saturday, storms didn't really even start until like 6 o'clock. Like, you're already past that time of best storm initiation. And yesterday, it started a little bit early, but still not early as you would want to see for peak supercell development. We change over to our lapse rates. Lapse rates are good, not incredible though. We are still seeing some pretty good lapse rates across this part of the area. You can see again 7.8. if you're, these were a little bit stronger yesterday, but again, those other ingredients were kind of the limiting factor there. The other thing I want to look at is our cape. Our cape matched over with our shear. Let me actually go back to our most recent model run as well so we can get a good look. So yeah, we already seen this cape really surging in from the south. We got like 5,000 joules of cape. That's more than enough. There's plenty of energy going on here. Our shear is also looking really good. You can see these black arrows and red arrows. They're almost at a 90-degree angle. That's where you really want to see. You want to see that 90-degree angle right there for the shear. That is your peak. Perfect amount of shear that you want to look. We got a lot of these 90-degree angles across all of here. So even after these storms do form and eventually conglomerate into these lines of storms, I still think there's going to be that pretty significant tornado threat. And in my personal opinion, these embedded tornadoes are just as dangerous as supercell tornadoes. They're hard to see. Normally by that time you're already sitting at nighttime. So it's just as dangerous because the tornadoes are so obscured. While that hail risk will more than likely fall off once these storms do start forming into lines, as we saw yesterday, that tornado risk I still think is going to be there because our shear is looking really good. So you can get these bow echoes to start forming in, and that's what causes these what we call MCS tornadoes, Mesoscale convective systems. It's just the tornadoes that happen in those lines of storms. So I do think that we're still going to be watching a pretty long-lived tornado threat, Taylor, as we did yesterday. I just think that our chance of getting those supercells are going to be much more prevalent as we head into this afternoon, especially with, we've already been seeing, I saw up here, the storm's already starting to fire around here at noon. I'm like, already? Already? I mean, this time yesterday, we weren't even thinking about watches, and now we got 2 watches already initiated, and storms already starting to fire in the warm sector. So I think that today is probably going to be our best chance to really get some pretty large hailstones. I think our largest has been 3.5 inch. So you said 4 inch. Let's see if we can break that.
Yeah, I think that we can absolutely get 4-inch size hailstones for today. One thing that I do want to note with this that Martin and I were both talking about this morning is that yesterday we thought these storms would start a lot later than what we're seeing today. Models are trending a lot earlier for that storm initiation. As we just talked about, we're seeing already the first few signs of storm forming now, which is truly hours before I expected them to form. I think a lot of people expected the storms to form. So that's also going to impact what we get later on this evening. What happens now impacts what happens this evening, which impacts what happens overnight, which impacts what happens tomorrow. So a lot of this is just an ever-changing forecast depending on what happens right now, depending on what happens in a few hours. Martin, thank you so much for your behind the scenes expertise of what we do before we even get onto this forecast. Now, I want to make sure that we're answering some questions here. So I'm going to go through some of your questions in the comments section, and then we're going to, here, let me switch over some things right now, and let me pull my graphics in. Okay, so let's talk about some of these questions I'm going to answer from the comments section here, and then we'll talk about tomorrow. So let me pull up my radar. This is 2:30. First question I see in the comments section is Tulsa. So you guys give me just a minute. Oh, let's see. I saw Tulsa on here.
Here, that's the
See it? Tulsa. There we go. Oh, okay. There we go. Okay. So that's the first question that I saw. So we'll just go through Tulsa right now. Timeline for today. So this is the NAM. This is actually the NAM 3K. Has storms forming just before 2 o'clock this afternoon. A long line of storms as we get into 2 o'clock into 5 o'clock. I know that was fast for you. So I'd say between about 2 and 5, Tulsa, you're seeing storms on your doorstep. 5 to 8, storms are passing through. So your evening commute could be a tricky one. But again, models are really struggling for storms in Oklahoma. Models are not agreeing on what we expect in Oklahoma today. There's a lot more agreements in Kansas and Nebraska, but we're really, really struggling for Oklahoma. So take that with a grain of salt for that timeline today. Actually, a great place that I like to see like a verification of this timeline is the National Weather Service. I want to see if they have the same timeline that I just gave you. Give me just a minute. Okay, not too far off. They actually are saying another round late tonight. So this is just round 1 for Tulsa. And then they're saying that we could see another round late tonight into the overnight hours after midnight and into about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So not only your evening commute tonight, but also your morning commute tomorrow. Keep an eye out for that tomorrow as well. That kind of gets into our forecast for tomorrow. So let's go into tomorrow's storm risk. Here's a look at storms on Tuesday. What really happens here is that cold front kicks in, and we're going to see this progress to the east through the early morning hours tomorrow, and then another redeveloping storm risk through the afternoon. So we've got 2 different things going on. We'll talk about the morning first. Your main risk in the morning is going to be strong wind gusts and a very low tornado risk, but we can't rule that out. Morning tornadoes are not common, but they are possible. And you can see that as we progress these storms, and this is kind of what we were talking about earlier, around 3 through the overnight hours, right? There it is. There's round 3. These storms stretch all the way from Des Moines into the northwestern portion of Oklahoma, tracking through places like Oklahoma City and Tulsa through your morning commute tomorrow. I think it's going to be a very, very busy wake up for us tomorrow morning, not just for the meteorologists, but for everyone out there. Give yourself some extra time as you head out the door, because as you hit that morning commute, you may be delayed because of the rain. Storms will continue to track down to the south and east as we head into the mid-morning hours, but then we're watching for redeveloping storms through the afternoon and evening hours tomorrow. Take a look at this. We've got more storms redeveloping across Texas. That could be your hail risk across Texas tomorrow. And then we've got another round of storms farther up to the north and east and our Midwest communities, New York and Pennsylvania. All of this will be a tornado risk for tomorrow, and we'll talk about that tornado risk here in just a few minutes. Here's a look at your hail risk for tomorrow. Again, I mentioned southern Texas is going to be in the hail risk. Abilene, Texas, just south of Lubbock and just south of Oklahoma City for that hail risk tomorrow. You go farther up to the north, your hail is going to be a lot smaller. But overall, I think that tennis ball or baseball size hail is possible tomorrow. Again, that's in Texas. A better chance for tornadoes up to the north. So we have that tornado risk highlighted there in green for places like Detroit, the northern side of Ohio, and Buffalo, New York. We've got another risk for tornadoes. Let me move this map down into far southern Kansas tomorrow. Excuse me, far southern Texas tomorrow. Look, you talk about like 15 different states, you're bound to make that mistake. And then this is a look at day 3. So this is Wednesday. Finally, storms start to calm down on Wednesday. So there's a look at today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. I'll go back to some of our questions here. So we talked about Tulsa earlier. What other questions do we have? Kansas City, Missouri. You guys are in the path for storms multiple times today. So I think that you'll get hit with round 2, which is the most impressive round, and round 3, which is the overnight round. So here's a look at round 2, developing this afternoon and evening. Storms likely to go right through Kansas City here. And then we've got another round developing after the sun goes down. And that's going to be more of your wind risk, your overnight storms. These may wake you up through the overnight hours. We're looking at storms right around 3 to 5 in Kansas City. So right before your morning commute. Maybe some lingering rain during your morning commute. Now, here's the thing. With multiple rounds of storms, not only do you have that tornado, wind, and hail risk at some point during the day, but you also have that flooding risk through the overnight hours. So keep in mind that you could have a flooding risk through your morning commute. What other questions do we have today? Let's see. Michael says, keep your 3-inch hail Kansas City once up to 2 inches. I mean, Kansas City's hail risk is still really impressive. It may not be the most impressive on the map, but still, it just takes one storm. What about Florida? Florida is out of the storm risk for today, but you guys, you may get some rain. You gonna get any rain? Here's tomorrow. I mean, I feel like it's always kind of raining in Florida, but look, you guys are out of the hail risk. You're out of the storm risk for tomorrow. Ah, there you go. You got some rain on the southern side of Florida. Any other questions? We've covered a lot of your questions here, so I'm just looking for anything that's lingering. Springfield, Missouri. Jacob is asking about Springfield, Missouri. Let's go to Springfield. Yeah, Martin's saying a potential wind risk. I think that's absolutely possible. You guys may get a little, and tomorrow, yeah, you guys may get a little bit of hail, but your hail risk is going to be pretty low. This is going to be your main round of storms right after sundown, so right around dusk into the late night hours, mainly a wind risk here. A little bigger. All righty, and I think those are all of our weather questions. Let's move on. So we've talked about today, we've talked about tomorrow. Again, all of this thanks to a low pressure system that's coming in from the west, mainly around Oklahoma and Kansas, and that's moving into the eastern portion of Kansas. So there's your hail risk for tomorrow, maximum hail size tomorrow, tennis to baseball size hail, and that'll be down in Texas. We also have a tornado risk in the Northeast and the Midwest tomorrow. As we head into Wednesday, we've got 2 areas for concern. We've got 1 hail risk down in Texas, another up in our northeastern states, New England states there. And just a little recap of what we've talked about today. The most significant severe weather risk that we've seen just about this entire month is that moderate risk in Kansas, southern Nebraska, and the northwestern side of Missouri. Over 75 million under the severe weather threats for today. All hazards are possible. For tomorrow, the system moves to the east. We've got 2 areas to watch, 1 tornado risk from the Midwest to our New England states, and then another one accompanied with a hail risk down in Texas tomorrow. And then again on Wednesday, we've got 2 areas to keep an eye out for. Those are your severe weather risks this week. We do have a cool down coming after storms. These temperatures are going to drop. Martin's excited about that. Temperatures are back into the 70s. Across the plains. No, I'm not. I love the heat, but I know that I'm pretty alone in that.
You'll get 20 in the next couple months. Don't you worry.
We've got the 60s and 70s coming after these storms move out. And thankfully, we've got a lot of rain coming for Oklahoma. We absolutely need it. So I know that a lot of people are excited about the rain that's coming for this area across a good portion of the plains. As we look into the later portion of the month, May 23rd through the 27th, it looks like temperatures will be above normal. Music to my ears. I know a lot of people are enjoying this nice spring-like weather, but this warm weather is accompanied by a lot of rain coming into the southern and central portions of the U.S., which is great news, especially for people that are impacted by the drought right now. Did you guys see, I think it was on Saturday, we had a haboob across places like western Kansas and western Texas, and those really, really strong winds picked up all of that dust. So we absolutely need the rain because that dust storms are just no good. Also no good for farmers too. I know that those crops, they need that rain as well.
There was an official report of 0 visibility on Canada.
0 visibility. Yeah, that's absolutely insane. That dust can be very, very dangerous. So I think that those are all of our weather updates for right now. Any other weather questions? We've already gone through some of these, but I can go back through this just a little bit here. We've got one question about Salina and then another question about Iowa. So we talked about Iowa at the very beginning of the forecast, but we can talk about it one last time, and then we're going to jump off of here and we're going to talk about severe weather later on today, or we're going to get ready for severe weather later on today. This is our graphics system. You guys are kind of seeing the behind the scenes of the graphics system here. I'm going to get these maps ready to go, and then we'll talk about Salina and we'll talk about Iowa. So we talked about Iowa earlier in the forecast. Des Moines under mainly a wind risk for today. Okay, so that's going to be your most likely hazard, is going to be that wind risk through the central and southern portion of the state. Now storms will start a little bit earlier in Des Moines today, and then they're going to see that first switch over from a hail risk to a wind risk. becoming more linear first in Des Moines, which is why it's going to be more of that wind risk for today. But we can't count out several tornadoes, some of those strong in this area, especially the farther south that you go across the state. And of course, that large hail risk as well, which for both Kansas, including Salina, I think Salina will be the best place to get large hail today, including Salina to Topeka areas. Large hail possible in these areas. How large in Iowa? Well, we're talking about golf ball to maybe up to tennis ball size hail in Des Moines, down to the southwestern portion of Iowa today.
Last year, she's almost stood up there between top.
Yeah, it's not going to be as promising in these areas. It's going to be more of a Kansas hail risk today, but still, golf ball size hail is pretty impressive. Let's zoom down and answer your question about Salina. I have Salina on the board here. What was that question? Vargas Ken is asking about Salina, Kansas. I've spent a lot of time in Salina whenever I lived in Wichita, so I know this area very well, and that's why I'm so confident in saying that I think that we could have some really, really large hail in this area today. We don't usually use these levels of hail risk, so from Salina to Emporia to Topeka, this is your best chance for massive hail. We're talking about 3.5 to 4 inch size hailstones possible in this area today. Some strong tornadoes possible as well. We're talking about EF2 or stronger possible. Now, it's not guaranteed, but I think this is one of the most impressive severe weather risks that we've seen in a long time for this area. I think those are all of our questions. We're going to get ready for our weather forecast or our severe weather coverage. We've already got storms forming, so we may be back on here just in the next hour or two. In the meantime, we'll keep you guys updated on all things weather on our social media pages. So make sure that you follow us on all forms of social media, including our TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter pages. Here's a look at that graphic so you know where to follow us. And as always, get your maps, get your HailTrace subscription before storms hit today. Head over to HailTrace.com to learn how to sign up for a subscription, or call us at 855-334-4245. Our sales reps can get you hooked up today. We've got people that can train you today before those storms hit, but you got to do that now because storms are coming in just a few hours. Thanks for joining us today. Meteorologist Taylor Cox. You heard from meteorologist Martin Lowrimore as well. We're going to post a few things on social media over the next few hours. Follow us there, and we'll see you back here in just a few hours for severe weather coverage.